All right. Happy Monday, everybody. Sorry I had to miss last Friday. I was traveling that day and I couldn't make it work, but it actually worked out pretty well because a whole lot happened between then and now. And now I get a chance to dig into it and talk about it. So before we get into that, though, of course, I wanted to always remind everybody to follow my Twitch channel so that you can get alerts and also so you can comment in the chat. And then lastly, follow my Telegram channel for alerts on all my upcoming shows. The links to that are in my Twitch profile and in the description of all my videos. So go there, look at those links, and get yourself alerted. All right, and with that, let's get started. Also, I'm only using one monitor today, which is kind of a first for me with doing this. So hopefully it's not too clunky and it works, but we'll see how it goes. All right. First things first, we knew we had a bunch of volatility coming because the Bollinger Bands were as tight as basically they've ever been. So we knew there was going to be a big breakout one way or the other. And the question is always, well, which way is it going to be? And of course, we were all hoping for it to be down, or I'm sorry, up, but of course, it ended up being down. So yeah. So then where are we now? What does that look like? Where does that leave us? Are we in a new cycle? I think is the first question I ask myself. Um, and it's like, yeah, probably, but it's funny. If you go back and look at these cycles, they're all very clear. Like the end of an old cycle and the start of a new cycle, it's a very clear delineation. You have, red candles down, immediately green candles up. Same thing here. You had even like a swing low here and then just immediately rocketed out. You had this one here that was iffy, but outside of that, you've usually got a very clear signal that you're in a new cycle. Um, and we don't really have that right now. We just have this very kind of meh. And if you actually go and look at like, open interest and funding rates and stuff on the derivative side, it's flat too. Like funding rates are neutral. The market hasn't really decided what's going on just yet. They're just kind of sitting here doing nothing, which is basically why price is sitting here doing nothing too. So, um, it's hard. It makes things cloudy. It makes it hard to tell if we're actually in a new cycle or not. I mean, I think we are based on just on the timing band, the fact that it was kind of right around day 63, and we'll get into some other reasons why I think so here in a minute. But I just kind of wanted to start with the cycles because, again, we are sort of right in that timing band, and um, it makes sense, with a big leg down like this, or just a big movement in any one direction. Usually that's going to kind of give you the strong signal. I would have liked to have seen obviously something bounce right out of this just to kind of give a little bit more clarity, but we don't have that. So right now we just have to kind of wait and see. I know there are things coming up in the news potentially this week, potentially with like the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust potentially being converted to an ETF, maybe even as soon as tomorrow. I mean, that's maybe wishful thinking, obviously, and of course, the ruling has to come out and it has to come out in favor of. But that's something that could, you know, spark some volatility in the market. In the meantime, I spent most of the weekend really just kind of digging into charts and looking at what was what and trying to figure out, okay, well, what's next? Where are we now? What does this mean for the market? Has structure shifted? What are the important levels? Kind of all of that stuff. And there's quite a lot to break down and dig into here. So let's switch over to this chart. I started by, well, actually, let me go to the weekly. I started by just kind of identifying what I thought were relevant levels right now. First of all, we've got this big important level down here where this weekly candle ended at the end of this wick here. And if we kind of go back to, actually, if we look at this chart here, so this was the end of a weekly cycle. So we had this first big weekly cycle of the new year, starting back in the end of December, early January, and basically it completed its run here at the end of this last cycle. That ended a weekly cycle. So ideally, if we are to continue this uptrend that we're in, you want to see a couple more right translated 60-day cycles coming out of this. And so far we didn't really get that. We got kind of just very much in the middle, and now we're back right down almost to where we started. So if this breaks down below this level, this is really key. This is kind of a major structural shift. We've already got quite a bit of structural shift that I'm going to touch on, but this is sort of like a really important level to pay attention to. So if we go back to this chart, that's this level here. So I made a note of that weekly cycle invalidation level. I made a note here. This is pretty much where this candle body ended, and where we are now. This is basically just support on the weekly candle body. And then I thought, well, if we lose all this, what does that look like? Where does that leave us? What are the important next levels down? Well, we've got this level here where these candle bodies are, but that's pretty much right next to this weekly level. And I figure if we lose this level, we're not going to suddenly be saved by these two. We're going to blow right through that. So the next level down puts us right about here, where these candle bodies are, where these candle bodies are. And there's a couple things that stick out from that. One, this makes a lot more sense. Two, if we look at uh, price range down to here, that's almost an exact like 30% decline from the top of this peak. And that happens all the time in Bitcoin. That's actually very common in terms of corrections in Bitcoin, and so that makes a lot of sense too. I don't really feel like below that it's kind of we're round tripping back to back to the yearly open basically. I feel like if we lose this level here, maybe we get caught here, but I doubt it. I feel like this is kind of really a key level. To look for. And again, if we lose this, it's all the way back down. One thing I did notice as I was kind of plunking around this weekend, and I'm not putting a ton of stock into this, it was just more an observation. It wasn't like I'm gonna hold my breath on this, but I went back and looked at all the times, just like in the last 5 years or so, that Bitcoin has broken down through this 20-week moving average. That's this red line right here. The green one is the 10-week, the red one is the 20-week. And every time we've had Bitcoin sort of break down through that and close down through it and have, kind of, it's kind of represented a change in market structure. And I looked at it and I measured, from the most recent peak of that breakdown to the trough each time that happened. And well, as you can see, they're pretty significant. Obviously, this first one back in 2017 at the peak, we had a 70% dip. Obviously, I'm not expecting that. But the rest of these were in the 50s and 60s, 50, low 50% corrections. Do I think that's going to happen? No. If that did happen, what would that look like? Let's just say down to 50. That would put us, a little bit below the the yearly open. That would round trip us back. Um, it's like on the one hand you say I don't think that's going to happen, but on the other hand you say, well, yeah, but it's happened the last 5 times that in a row that Bitcoin has done this. So could it happen? Certainly it could. I mean, that makes a ton of sense. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but also maybe that's just a fair amount of I don't want that to happen. I mean, granted, there are some differences here between this current one and these other ones. In this other one, it was way more overextended above the 20-week in all of these cases. Well, less so in this one here, but then we had the COVID crash, so that sort of exacerbated that. So we can kind of eliminate this one. We can kind of eliminate this one because this was really a 4-year cycle peak and the market was just insane. So of course you're going to get a mega correction. But let's look at these other three, like this one here, and this one here. In all these cases, Bitcoin was still quite a ways overextended from both the 10 and the 20, and the 10 was way above the 20, in all of these, in this one and in this one. Compared to now, we're not like in that situation at all. The 10 and the 20 were just about on top of each other, and we were barely above it. We weren't even what I would consider overextended. So we've got that going for us. That's a huge difference to pay attention to, and that can kind of invalidate a lot of the rest of these. If you measure down from just say the 20 on all of these to the trough, it's all right around 30%, which makes sense. If we take this, that comes back to here. That seems a little more reasonable. Granted, we would need to be measuring it from say here, and in that case, we're only looking at a 22-ish% dip. But even that's, between 20 and 30%, I think is totally normal for right now and not even that scary. And I really wouldn't even be worried if that happened. Honestly, I kind of hope it does sort of at this point. I mean, if it's going to go down at this point, let's just do it. Let's just get it over with. But yeah, so anyway, here's kind of going back to this. These are the levels I'm looking for. And then what do I think is going to happen from here? Well, let me get rid of this. So a couple things. One, we've got the grayscale decision looming large. Let me change this to the daily. If that happens, that's obviously going to pump, price back up, particularly if it's a favorable outcome. But how much and how far? What does that mean? And I really kind of keep coming back to the idea that we've struggled to break through this 30,000 level now for a while, for some months, for the whole year. It's poked up and been rejected. And so, is that grayscale going to be enough to break through finally and push up into the 30s? I don't know, maybe. The bigger question I have is if there is a favorable outcome with the grayscale, does that prompt the SEC then to go, all right, this is two cases in a row where we've had rulings come out against us, and maybe we just kind of go ahead and acquiesce and just approve these other ETFs, the BlackRocks and all these other ETFs at this first approval window. I don't think that's going to happen, but I guess I feel like it maybe slightly increases the odds of that happening, but it does maybe increase the odds more of it happening on the second approval window in October. Um, I feel like, and honestly, even if the grayscale doesn't end up with a favorable outcome, I still think that this date here kind of looms large. And then one thing I noticed, if we do a measurement here from, say, this cycle low that we're looking at currently out to this, what do you know? That's right at about 60 days. So that's interesting to me too. So um, I feel like outside of something crazy happening with grayscale or something unforeseen that I can't imagine, I still feel like this time frame is going to be the most important time frame right now for the next 60 days. And so what does that look like in terms of a Bitcoin cycle, which is pretty much what we're starting a new one of right now? Well, I feel like it probably would come up and get rejected roughly around the same area like these other ones have and come back down. And so let's see, I drew a couple different ideas. So if we look at this, I feel like, in this scenario with sort of low volatility, low volume that we're dealing with right now, likely we would see something that's more of like a middle translated or a left translated cycle where we're going to peak up around day 20, maybe day 30, somewhere in that time frame, and then we're just going to basically bleed out. I really see something very much akin to this previous cycle that we've had. Now, does that mean it bleeds out and just kind of comes back down basically to right where we are today? Are we going to be 60 days from now looking at the same exact price that we're sitting at right now this minute? That's certainly one scenario. The other scenario is we maybe break down through and come down to this level here. That's what I'm looking at. And I feel like, sure, there's lots of other ways it could go. It could go straight down from here. It could just kind of blow through this. We could get like a bad outcome with grayscale tomorrow, and that just blows sentiment out of the water, and we just get another leg down all the way. I feel like if we lose this level here, it's basically going to go to this level. I don't really feel like this level is going to hold support. It could. If it does, that would be great. But if we lose it, there's pretty much nothing going on between here and here. So maybe it bounces here. Maybe it doesn't. Alternatively, we could come up here and just keep going north. Again, I really only see that happening if something major with grayscale comes along with that ruling and it is favorable, and that really pushes things. But honestly, I feel like neither one of those are the most likely scenario. I feel like something more along this line has become my base case. Probably not down to here, more likely maybe up to here, or here. Maybe it just kind of does a double bottom at this level here. We kind of get this goofball cycle here. We get one more, it double bottoms here, and then we, maybe get some, well, whatever happens, it's going to depend on this news here that comes around this time frame. So these are, again, the important levels, potentially with this being I don't know, you can call it a worst case scenario. Maybe it's a best case scenario. Maybe you are looking to buy and you're looking for a good entry, and having Bitcoin come back down to the low 20s is a great deal for you, and that's cool. And yeah, for me possibly it would be too. So I don't really care in terms of like where it ends up. I'm just kind of identifying what I see are probably the most likely scenarios. A couple more things that I observed over the weekend while I was digging through this is, let me hide this. I'm really kicking myself for fading this divergence flag indicator, this bearish divergence flag indicator, because I kind of went back and looked. Let me hide these two. Oops. Because I went back and looked, and this divergence flag doesn't flag very often. And every time it has flagged, it's been there's been at minimum a 10% reversal. Um, and right now we're, I think, at about a 16 or so percent reversal. Some of the reversals have been very significant. Massive one here, obviously massive one here. And then on the upside too, on the bullish side, even massive one here, massive one here. Not all of them are huge, like this one, maybe this one, maybe this one or this one. But even this one is still 10%. Um, and so literally in this time frame here, I mean, this chart doesn't go back as far as Bitcoin goes. This is just a Coinbase chart and not like the index chart. But even going back here to 2015, um, this chart or this indicator has literally never been wrong on the weekly in terms of like identifying at minimum of a 10% reversal. So uh, lesson learned there. Don't ignore this thing. Don't fade it. Don't be in denial if this, particularly with such a strong indication. I mean, even some of these ones and twos, represented big movements, and this was a proper five flag. And I just was like, something doesn't look right here. I don't believe it. I'm not buying it. And obviously, if I'd have sold there, it would have been perfect. And then even if I look at the 3 day, it was even stronger. And it was even, I think, a tick early, or was it late? Was it the same day? Maybe it was right around that same time. But on the 3 day, it was even stronger. Big sell sign, six flag, bullish or bearish divergence, and I just ignored it. Just ignored it. I was like, that can't be. That doesn't make any sense. Um, and so I will be paying attention. On the daily, it's a lot noisier. I mean, still it shows pretty big price movements, and it's right more often than it's wrong, but it's not like 100%. But the interesting thing is, we have one now. We had these, and then it tanked, and now we have one, uh, pointing up on the bull side. And so I do think that we're going to get a bounce out of here. I don't think that we're just going to keep going down. That's not really not my base case. I think that we'll probably come back up to this area where we just were, and like I said, fizzle sideways and then roll back over, round about this time here, and we'll see which one of these levels that it ends up at. Um, but yeah, it's just that's kind of what I think on Bitcoin. I don't really see us just blowing through here at this point, unless some bad news happens, unless something ugly happens with the grayscale thing. Um, but if anything, we'll find support here, and then we'll see. If we don't get support here, it's down here. Let's look at ETH. It's funny, ETH is almost exactly the same. I don't even know why I look at ETH actually. All right, let's go back to this alt dominance chart. This was interesting too throughout all this because there's still some alts that I noticed are moving pretty good. And so this actually has continued to go up. What is it up now? So last week it went up, dominance went up 7%. This week it's actually flat. It's down a percent. Or it's up 1%. And it's broken out of this chain. Like if we zoom in on this, it's sort of broken out of this trend. So it's not, maybe what you could consider like a bear market rally in an otherwise larger downtrend. It seems like it's broken this. but I still am not totally convinced that we're looking at a scenario here like this where we're just going to keep pumping. And that's because if you look at like all of the biggest alts, like Solana, it's down on the week. The Shiba, which I can't even stand talking about, but it's also, it had a big pump last week, which I think drove a lot of that, but it's kind of new too. Some of the bigger ones we've had from last week too, like the Thor chain. Um, oops, Thor actually continued to pump for another minute. I thought it was going to roll over here. It continued to pump for another leg up, but I think it's probably cooked at this point. And then the same thing with Thor swap. It totally rolled over, which again I was really expecting. I mean, nothing really pumps with as little market cap as this has. Nothing pumps like this and then just kind of keeps going at this phase of the market. So usually this stuff comes down as quickly as it goes up. So I sort of saw that coming. But a couple that are interesting to me are optimism continues to show strength. Yes, it bounced off of this 20 week like I thought it would, but it's kind of found support at the 10 and is pushing back up again through here. And we've got strong, I guess, upside on the USD pair too. So that's interesting to me. There are some buys to be had here, but I just don't really know because it's just so all over the map. And I still feel like I'm not convinced that it's alt season yet. I think maybe it could be time to look at buying some longer term holds. I don't know what those are. I mean, I feel like you're going to have to kind of evaluate those on a case by case basis. And really, in that case, you want to be paying attention to what it's doing against Bitcoin. And in the case of Solana, it is it is holding flat. It's holding steady against Bitcoin. And technically, we do have the makings of a trend reversal here into an uptrend against Bitcoin. I mean, price is sort of punched up through here. It's trading above both of these moving averages. It's trading in the upper half of the Bollinger Bands. The 10 week has flipped north of the 20 week, and that's what you want to see. It's still really early days. Obviously, we still have this pretty big buy signal on the weekly too, in terms of a bullish divergence too, which is certainly worth paying attention to. Just like I said about Bitcoin, so it's got some signals here. Granted, it's got a counter signal here, but this is constructive. This is something that you want to see. Just, I don't know that it's ready yet, but I feel like if this continues to hold, if we see, maybe some more touches on the top side of these bands here, and this continue to, these two moving averages continue to diverge apart, that might be time to look at Solana and maybe jump in on that. Another one that kind of crossed my eye in researching what alts were pumping last week was HBAR, this Hedera hash graph. This project's been around a while. It's been around, I think, since 2017 or 2018. I actually almost bought into the ICO of this back when it came out. And so I had kind of not dismissed it, but just I hadn't really paid much attention to it. But it's showing a lot of strength lately too. It's got a similar trajectory that Solana has, against Bitcoin on the weekly, but again, it's still kind of early. I'm still looking for this crossover here. I'm looking for basically this to sort of continue for a little bit longer. But I sort of like what I'm seeing here. It's definitely in an uptrend on the USD pair on the daily, and it's continuing to show strength. And it's one of the few that are, up on most days right now when we're seeing most of the market tank. And then optimism too. I just don't know what to make of this. I mean, people are using it clearly. It's got a lot of usage. It's generating money. It's generating fee revenue. So this could be a thing. And then the other one I'm kind of looking at is Lido, but it doesn't look great yet. It doesn't have a great chart, like really on any pair right now. But I do think that with the usage that it has and the money that it's generating and the total value that it has locked, it's going to continue to be a strong player in this cycle going forward. And then outside of that, Unibot's a new one that kind of got put on my radar. It's interesting too. It had a bit of a correction here from these highs, but I'm going to be paying attention to it too. It's still technically holding its uptrend against Bitcoin, albeit barely. I mean, granted, it's only been around for, this is a daily chart, so it's only been around for what, a month. So it's not really anything to put a bunch of stock in yet, but it's new. It's a new shiny object. People are paying attention to it. It's gained a lot of market share. It's got a lot of buzz. People are talking about it, and this is something that I'm paying attention to. So I think that it could be something to look at as we go forward. Um, what else? Yeah, I don't know. Let's look at liquidity and actually let's go here. So liquidity continues to dip. Um, that's not looking great, but that's also probably dictating a lot of this price action too. I mean, we can see this rolling over. Basically, just Bitcoin is doing what liquidity is doing. Separately from that, this green line is the PMI index, and I'm anxious for the end of the month to roll around so that we can get a new update. I have a feeling this is going to go up. I'm hoping that we're seeing the bottom, this being sort of the bottom of the business cycle. Um, and this could sort of be signaling it's time to kind of things are going to start cooking again, basically. And then there was another one here I wanted to look at. No, no, I got too many charts, too many tabs. This is making me nuts here. Come on, this one. Okay, this is a cool chart too. I can't take credit for this. Somebody actually turned me onto this. I didn't figure this one out myself, although it's not like it would have been hard. But this is basically so. This is the orange line is Bitcoin. The green line is the dollar index, the Dixie inverted. So it's cool to see basically how it literally just flows pretty much exactly what Bitcoin, just like how the liquidity dictates what Bitcoin does. Again, really, so does the Dixie, and they're all intertwined. So this is an interesting way to sort of get a sense of what you can expect from Bitcoin price action by looking at a chart like this, where you can see what the Dixie's doing, and then looking at a chart like this, where you can see what the liquidity is doing and the business cycle is doing. And all three of these combined, I think, is going to sort of give me really strong insight on what I can expect to see. But right now, it's telling me don't expect much. It's telling me it's downward price action. And I think what we'll see is this one will probably start to kick things off first. If we get a strong uptrend in this one, obviously I'd love to see it set a higher high here or even come back up to this one. If we can start seeing this really reverse and send a strong upside, I think that's going to sort of send signals. This is going to signal the rest of the market that um, you know manufacturing is up, uh, companies are building, uh, and things like that. And so the business cycle is ticking back up, and I think that will spark positive sentiment in all asset classes across the board, and that will reflect in what we're seeing elsewhere. So this is kind of going to be the key one that I'm looking for here. Um, yeah, I think that kind of pretty much covers everything. We'll kind of wrap up here. We'll sort of recap. Um, Let me show my trajectory here again. So this is what I'm looking at. This is what I'm looking at for Bitcoin. Again, we'll see. We'll see if it ends up here. We'll see if it holds here. We'll see if it comes down and does a double bottom here, like it did here. We'll see if it breaks through and comes all the way down to here, or we'll see if it just keeps going up, or we'll see if it keeps dropping straight down through here. All of those could happen. Any of those could happen. Somewhere in this area, though, is my likely trajectory. I don't think we can expect much from Bitcoin or anything really. I think we're kind of due for a correction. September is notably one of the worst months in history for Bitcoin. I mean, if you look at that graph they make that where they show all the gains and losses for Bitcoin over various months throughout the year, September, it's pretty much red every single month that it's been in existence. So it would sort of be a new thing to have a green month this month, which tells me, we're likely to have a red month. But then conversely, October is historically one of Bitcoin's best months. So maybe that'll coincide with the CTF launch. Maybe that'll just coincide with sentiment getting reset from this, very boring, dull 60-day cycle that I think we're about to enter into. Maybe it'll be reset from, a nuke down to here prior to that. Either way, I feel like the next 30 days, uh, meh, and then coming into October, hopefully we'll see a bounce from there, maybe even mid-October. And again, I really think that, like I keep hammering, this second ETF deadline right around the middle of October is going to be what everybody's paying attention to. And I just don't think we're going to see much price action really anywhere. I mean, yeah, we got this volatility chunk here, but I mean, it's funny if you go and look at this chart. This is a measure of Bitcoin's historical volatility index. This move that we got, this massive move that we got here, it literally just did this. It was just meh. It was just, okay, we're not going down anymore. We're not even less volatile than we've ever been. We basically just went sideways. So that's how much this registers on the grand scheme of things in terms of volatility, this move right here. So we need to see a lot more up and down or up and down price action. And I don't think we're going to get that. I just don't see us. I just can't make a case for that from a fundamental standpoint, from a macro standpoint, for that to happen in this next 60 days. I mean, long term, yeah, I'm still super bullish on everything. I still think this cycle is playing out fairly normally. I mean, if you look at historical cycles in the past, this last cycle was almost like an anomaly with this huge pump up, and then it kind of just leveled off. But the previous cycle before that, it was very much just a slow kind of sideways grind for a solid year plus going into the halving basically, and then we sort of kicked off out of there. So this doesn't really surprise me. This doesn't do anything for me. I don't really care. I'm not worried about this. It's too early to get worried about anything. The only thing that would really worry me is if we start setting new lower lows. Then I would start to get worried. But in the meantime, it's sort of business as usual. I'm not worried about any of this. I'm just kind of letting it play out and trying to play it, any way that I can. And so just, be patient, relax, don't worry. If this is freaking you out, then you probably need to look at your holdings and either lighten it or figure out how you can play this or whatever, educate yourself. But right now, I'm not worried about this. Even if it comes down to here, I'm not worried about this. Um, Honestly, even if it round trip back down to here, I don't know that I'd really worry. Like I said, it's only if we start getting punching down through that, and really, in this scenario, I'm going to be in a position to buy at these lower levels. So I would welcome a scenario like this. And if this isn't something that you welcome, then you kind of need to look at how you're managing your funds and figure out if you're doing the right thing. So yeah, I think on that note, I'm going to call it. We'll see how things look on Wednesday. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you then.